Hello, Kathy. Hello, sports fans.
There you go. It's contagious. Okay, and one of the reasons that I'm happy to be with Kimberly today is because in 2010, this year, she has 3 brand new books out. And so I've invited her here to talk about each one of them. So let's start. Why don't we start with The Water Seeker, huh?
Okay, The Water Seeker came out this May. And The Water Seeker is an epic novel about a boy's life. And it's inspired by a moment that I had with my husband when he mentioned in a casual conversation that his father taught him to find water beneath the ground in the backyard. And I had never heard of dowsing. And he said he took a forked branch and was able to tell where the water was at. And Jerry learned to do it. And so I was so inspired by that. I knew I was going to write a story with dowsing as part of the story. And so The Water Seeker came about, and I wish it was an easy book to write, but it wasn't. And it's generations of a family, but generations of a boy. And I really think it's a lot about, you know, what is family, you know, and who raises a child, because this child has many people that have a lot to do with how he's raised. So that's what that book is about. I also had the Adventures of Granny, Clearwater, and Little Critter. And the one thing about having to research a lot for this book is that I got inspired to write the picture book about going west. And it's about a grandmother and her youngest grandchild. They bounce out of the wagon accidentally when they hit a bump in the, I was going to say in the road, but not in the road, on the prairie. And they fly out of the back of the wagon, and they are stuck to a prickly pear cactus.
It's really, just a terrific tall tale. And what's interesting to me when you said that it really came from your experience of writing The Water Seeker is that despite the fact that they both kind of came from the same research, the same instinct to study the settling of the West, it's 2 completely different approaches.
Exactly.
To the same thing.
Yeah, one's tongue-in-cheek. And I had a lot of fun with that because I could bring in a lot of Western elements, you know, like the Pony Express, stagecoach robberies, you know, getting gold during the gold rush. And you know, because it is a tall tale and because I stretch it from here to there, I didn't want to confuse my poor readers. So at the end there is an author's note that sort of sets the story straight. And I think it's a great way to bring up that historical period.
Absolutely. Do you want to talk about the artist a little bit on this book?
Oh, yes, of course. Laura Haliska Beth is a very talented artist. I loved working with her on this book. And she, you know, I say working with her, but those of you that are aware of the way picture books are usually done is we didn't really know each other at all. Our editor was the middle person. Since then, I've talked to her a lot, but she does such wonderful things with the story, and I guess this is what they call mixed media, because she quilted the dress that Granny's wearing. She made the peanut brittle that you'll see a piece of peanut brittle in here. There's actually a photograph of the peanut brittle that she actually made. I'm going to have to find it. I can't find it right there, but she had a lot of fun doing this, and I think one comment that you made, and I've told her, you know, that you said this, is you said, Kimberly, you can tell she had as much fun with the pictures as you did with the story, writing the story.
Such an exuberant, it's a jubilant book. That's what I would call it, jubilant.
Oh,
it's like when you put it down, you want to go, jubilation.
I love that you said that. No, but it was a fun book to write.
It's so lively. It's just a wonderful book.
Well, thank you. And I love what Laura did too. She did such a significant part of the book. She's such a significant part of it. Piper Reed Campfire Girl is another story that came out this fall. And it is the 4th in the series of the Piper Reed books. Piper Reed is a Navy brat. I'm a Navy brat. I'm one of 3 girls. Piper is one of 3 girls. And so it pulls a lot from family experiences, and I stretch them too sometime. But I can definitely point to almost, you know, everything that happens in a story and say this is because of this that happened when I was young. And so they go camping with their family. And so They go with the Gypsy Club members and their families, and it's a lot of fun. And there's a new Gypsy Club member too, but you'll have to read it to find out who it is.
I know that Piper Reed fans are going to be glad to see Piper showing up with another journey, another adventure. It's interesting to me that so many of your books are about journeys, and at the same time, they really are about home too, and how you find home along the way.
I think that's why I write. I really do. I think moving so much, as a kid, that was something that always meant something to me. I always wanted to call one place home, and Louisiana became that as I was growing up, because that was the only place we kept returning to, was Forest Hill, Louisiana. And so that was my home. Now Texas is my home, but I will always have an emotional pull, toward Louisiana. And when I'm writing, I think my characters are trying to find home and what family means. I think family and home can almost be used as the same word. They're the same thing to me. And so they're either trying to interpret what family is, it might have changed a bit, or they're trying to find that home. And
I think that's apparent in your books. I know when I read them, that's what I find at the end of the book.
Well,
I feel like I've come home when I've read your books.
That's a nice
the
thing
end
to
of
say.
them.
Thank you.
Well, I want to return to The Water Seeker just briefly before I let you go and talk to you about what called you to write it the way that you did. So can you talk about that just a bit?
You mean as an epic form?
As an epic, right.
I think I've always wanted to write an epic. I loved reading epics when I was a young person. I remember reading a lot of adult epics, like, in a sense I read children's epics too, because Little House on the Prairie books.
Sure.
Though that's an epic. It's just done through a series of books. We get to see Laura grow up. We get to see Laura get married and have a baby, and I love those stories where you have grown with the characters, and so I loved Thornbirds. I read that, I think, in college when I was supposed to be reading a textbook. I remember getting sunburned because I'd fall asleep reading Howard Fast books, he had an American historical series. And so I think I was sort of destined to write a story that carried a family onward.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the magical realism that's in the book?
That was something that I also wanted to do. I had a little bit of it early on in early drafts with the birds. The birds in my book take a special place in the story, and kind of looking after the main character. But I decided to step it up a little bit. And when I did, the book to me started really working. And when I really started thinking about how important the women were, and I used some of that magical realism with the women in the book. I know it's probably confusing anybody who's not read the book at this point, but that's when the story started coming together, is when I got the point of view right and the magical realism, I stepped it up.
And you wrote it in an omniscient point of view, which is the classic storyteller's point of view. And I think all those elements, the epic part of it, the form that you wrote it, and the magical realism, that omniscient storyteller voice allows that to happen in a way that feels really natural to the story.
And it was the first time that I'd done that. I allowed myself to do that, but I think what was hard in allowing myself to do it was I was sharing it, because I did it also in the other characters' points of view. And so for a while, I thought, wait a minute, is this even allowed? Can I do this? And, sometimes we put sets of rules on ourselves, but if it's working and if the reader is not confused by it, then I think it can be successful. But when the reader is aware of, wait a minute, what's going on here, I think that's when you have a problem.
Yeah, well, it works. It definitely works in The Water Seeker.
Thank you.
Okay, before I let you go, I want to invite you to give one tip. Do you have a tip for young writers or young people, or just writing tip or life tip, whatever you choose?
I'm going to do one that I've had to return to. It's very simple, but I say it a lot in a lot of my talks to writers, and I got away from it this summer. I encountered writer's block. But I always say, no one can keep you from writing but you. So even if your time is spent a lot of different places, if you really want to write, you can find the time to do it. You have to just make the time.
Perfect.